go. Welcome everybody. Week 2 Pickems for the PBO are here. Last week it was Aiden and Mug. Now it's 3 people. It's me, Soren Flying. Aiden, say hello. He's back.
What's up?
And now for the Pickems, your favorite champ, Alabama. Alakazams, say hello.
What up?
All right, are you ready to?
I'm here.
So how basically this is gonna go is I'm just gonna introduce and kind of say a quick piece. As the commish, I stay unbiased as per usual, and they're just gonna talk about why they picked their teams. So are y'all ready to get into it?
Absolutely.
I'm ready.
Sick. So we're gonna start with the Kalos Conference, the beginner intermediate fellas. Starting with Ottawa Dolphins and Detroit Zekrums. Personally, right now, I like Ottawa where he is, but St. Louis, tell me about it.
Yeah, so Ottawa last week took on Glamorgan, game of the week. Ended up being a really good game from what I've seen from Ottawa. He's had a couple down years, but this year he came out firing all cylinders. He looked completely improved from his previous matchups, and overall just a lot stronger player. Really took it to Glamorgan. Unfortunately, didn't get the win, but had a really strong showing with a team that we deemed a little odd, a little weird, maybe not the most successful. But overall seemed to play with it really well. And Bumble picked up the win. The team that me and Mug said just did not look good, no synergy, bottom of power rankings, and he said, nah, that ain't me. I'm gonna show you what I'm here to do. Came out won, and looking at it, having Latias and Heatran, Sneeze the Roaring Moon, Lando T, I think that having one kind of gimmick mon like Smeargle, set spikes, webs, whatever it wants, T-Wave, and then have 5 other mons that Ottawa has to try to prep for. I'm giving it to Detroit 55-45.
Alabama.
All right, I'll go. Yep. So I think I was very impressed by Ottawa's play during Glamorgan. I don't know if it's necessarily improvement. I hope it is. But I think he showed, or I don't know if it's necessarily improvement or that he's just showing what he's truly capable of, what he's always really had in him. You know what I mean? And I think if he can navigate this team well, Umbreon is very scary for Detroit. His fairy type and fighting type. Sneasler is good, but I think Sneasler struggles in this matchup against Donphan, Zapdos, and Pheasantipede. So bringing it, which I think it will come, but bringing it, there's a bunch of other pivots for Umbreon, and then Enamorous T kind of struggles to do massive damage to Umbreon without setup. So it would require a pretty heavy setup, and then a Goodra Heavy Slam could probably do big damage to Enam. So I like Enam or Umbreon to kind of wish, not necessarily unchecked, but pretty close to it in this game, getting a lot of health around to teammates. I think Donphan's also pretty good in this game for Roaring Moon. Kind of we've seen in the Unova conference, Gliscor has done pretty good against Roaring Moon. I think Donphan can do a mini version of that maybe by being basically max defense and having Ice Spinner, because Roaring Moon is kind of frail defensively. And then Zapdos I also think is pretty decent this game. It can fire off strong electric moves into the likes of Enam and Blastoise, and it can also absorb some hits if it needs to, and come in on Lando and that kind of thing. That's why I personally have Ottawa as the favorite, but only slightly, because again, he did lose. I do think his rain is a little odd. I don't know if it's completely necessary. I think you could have non-rain Wake and be fine, or drop Wake and pick something else, but I think non-rain Wake is also fine, and I think Slow King without rain is also fine. I think Beartic isn't super strong into this game, so I don't necessarily know if Ottawa even needs to bring rain.
Well, I like the split decisions, close but in slightly either favor. So we'll see what happens with Ottawa versus Detroit as we head. Next one, the Indianapolis Ensign versus the GVGT. And Glamorgan looked good last week. St. Louis, please take it away.
Oh man, you talk about a game that's looking to go 50, 75, 100 turns. This is your game. Obviously, the stall team, what looks close to it, on the left in Indianapolis, which I actually can't remember what the result of their game was. I think it ended up winning over Norwalk, but I could be mistaken. And then Glamorgan, good showing week 1. Beating Ottawa 3-0 still showed why he made it to the championship. And overall, I think while Glamorgan does have the I would say advantage offensively going into the amount of defensive threats that Indianapolis has and the ability to pivot around and do things with like Regenerator and the versatility of those defensive mons, I have it going to Indianapolis, but only by a little bit because Glamorgan is still a very, very good player. 55-45.
All right. So I see this game a bit differently. In particular, you mentioned Glamorgan's offensive threats. I think I value those a lot here because I think, in particular, Greninja, probably Komodo as well, have a really, really strong chance of just completely obliterating this team if they get if Glamorgan pivots correctly, which I believe he can. I think Treads and Slowking Galar are both great support here. Treads can kind of come in on Torn T. It can sit around on like Clef, for example. Slowking Galar, Amoonguss can't really do anything to it. It can come in on Aloe or DOD at times. And then I think, I don't know if I should get into specific sets because, like, I don't know the sets of this team, but what if I'm spoiling something? I think certain Gren sets can be very, very deadly in this game. And I think Greninja has a really, really high chance of sweeping. Crocolore is really holding this team together this week with its Unaware, because I think like a Calm Mind Comfey maybe with stored power potentially, or a like setup Komodo, maybe similar to the Komodo he had last week with the Belly Drum Salak. Something like that can be really, really dangerous. I think Raging Bolt is pretty good against everything but Ting Lu. It should probably still come because it's so good against everything else.
So, GVGT or y'all have Indianapolis favored?
I have GVGT and he has Indianapolis.
Oh, all right. Well, another split down. We'll see what happens with the Memphis Mad Cargos versus the Toronto Star Raptors. St. Louis, please.
Yeah, so after playing this guy last week, got a little shaken in the middle of the game. Misplayed, allowed backs to do really dang well. Took out half my team, which was scary. But having those top 3 mons and Arcanine Hisui, obviously always a big problem, having all those offensive threats. But as we saw, Valiant, Gliscor, just Suicune itself sitting there behind Sub, Calm Mind, crazy team from the Star Raptors. And I think probably just the better player there, or at least the Toronto Star Raptors take it. I have it 70-30.
Yeah, I think Star Raptors win this one. I don't want to say handedly, but I think they have a lot more opportunities for sweeping and honestly also walling. Like, I think Iron Valiant has a pretty decent chance for sweeping potential if it has booster speed, and like you could run Calm Mind or maybe Swords Dance. I think Frostmoth in particular is very, very dangerous this game. And I think if it's Terra Ground, it has a very, very high chance of getting a few kills and really breaking a hole. I don't think Gliscor is necessarily great, because Darkrai and Bax and Spectre all kind of can do big chunks of damage, and Darkrai and Gliscor is going to struggle to hold off that damage. But I do think getting up spikes could be really, really good in this game as well to help facilitate a sweep from Frostmoth or potentially Valiant or maybe Suicune, who I also think is pretty.
Well, the Toronto Star Raptors looking to win and maybe even make a playoff run this season, and we'll find out. As we move on to the Tokyo Teddy Ursus versus the Philadelphia Flygons game of the week. Let's be on the lookout for that one upload to the YouTube. St. Louis, what you got?
Yeah, so Tokyo was in another game of the week last week against Tottenham, the returning champion. And turn one lost Chien Pao to a counter. Didn't matter, however. Ended up taking the game pretty handedly. Going up against Philadelphia, who showed out in week one, taking down another newcomer to the league in the Grossmore and Growliths. Showed some crazy sets. Azelf going boom was wild. But overall, I think Chien Pao, Annihilate with Permarina and Orthworm will be able to either manhandle this team and tear it apart, or sit there and eat hits from their biggest threats. And overall, I think it's just going to be a steady, slow win for the Tokyo Teddy Ursus. So that's why I have it 60-40 in their favor.
Yeah, I think the more I look at it, the more I think Tokyo Teddy Ursus might have my favorite team in the Kalos division. I really, really love this team. Obviously, big weakness, hazard removal, non-existent. So I think that's pretty much how Philadelphia is going to have to win. But like a Toxic Spikes Weezing could maybe be good. Or like a Gligar gets spikes, I believe, because Gliscor gets spikes. So Gligar could run spikes. I think Primarina, like a defensive Primarina with Calm Mind and Draining Kiss, is crazy this game. Crazy, crazy good. Really almost can't be beat, but I'm sure Philadelphia will find a way. I think Ursaluna Bloodmoon has a pretty decent matchup this game, except for Orthworm, who kind of nails it because of Earth Eater, and also it could run Protect to block from Bloodmoons, and then it literally probably couldn't touch it unless you're running Hyper Voice. And Ursaluna Bloodmoon really doesn't have the coverage to make Orthworm pay. So I think it's going to be an uphill battle for Philadelphia. Tokyo has Pokemon that are primed to set up and sweep, and his best Pokemon are getting walled by some of Tokyo's glue pieces, which I think makes it a very difficult matchup for him. But, like I said, Hazard's probably the way to go.
Can Tokyo win back-to-back games of the week? We will find out versus a fan favorite Philadelphia already week 2. As we move on, the Tottenham Hoothoots, your champ, versus the Norwalk Noiverns. Now I'm a bit surprised with the predictions. Aiden, why? Why 50-50?
So, looking at the teams, Dragapult and Grimmsnarl, first of all, good setup, good screens, which he didn't bring last week, and I think probably cost him the game. Instead, he brought more of an offensive set, which was a little questionable. And I think overall caused him to lose the game. Looking at it into Tusk, Boulder, Kyurem, Glamora, Jugulus, there's a lot of pieces like Kyurem can counter Polt, Rillaboom, Clodsire. Tusk can take care of like Dusk, Jolteon potentially, maybe before it Terras. Then Bronzong and Snorlax. Norwalk has a lot of the offensive threats into Tottenham's team, but I think Tottenham is a good enough player and has the defensive backbone to be able to play around all of it and be able to hit back against what Norwalk's going to be throwing at him. And so because of that, I gave it a 50-50.
Yeah, I think the first thing, this top 3 for Norwalk are pretty crazy. Kyurem, he traded for Great Tusk. And now Iron Boulder. These are like 3 potential first-round picks that Norwalk has. So his offensive potential is like out of the world. But I did slightly lean in Tottenham's favor for a few key contributors. Hitmontop, I think, looks really, really good this game. Assault Vest, Intimidate in particular, can kind of deal with those top 3. Like if you have Triple Axle by himself, like he can't obviously take all 3; it'd be too much damage. But he can like take one of them and probably maybe half of another. I think defensive Grimmsnarl with Reflect is pretty good in this game. I don't necessarily know the correct Pult set. The correct Pult set is always hard because, like, it's probably support because Sylveon's here, I imagine, but we'll have to see. I think Clodsire is pretty decent this game. I think you need it to absorb T-Spikes anyways, and it's also pretty good against, like, Kilowattrel and Duraludon Dirge, if you're Spadef, which you probably should be because you're not beating Tusk or Boulder anyways, and you could also probably come in on Sylveon too. So I am slightly leaning on Tottenham just because I think his walls match up better, but I do think in the future Norwalk's going to be picking up a good amount of wins with these top 3 massive threats.
In the top 3 picks, carry Norwalk, or is it truly a player diff? We'll find out as we move on to St. Louis Orgalios versus Grossmore and Growlithe now. St. Louis cannot talk about this game as Ben, the floor is all yours. And the PBO game of the week.
So what I do when I look at St. Louis's opponents is I look for their dark type, right? That's basically what you have to do because Deoxys Speed's there and it's got its terrain. And so what are your resists? One of them's Golden Go. That's an alright resist, right? And who's the dark? It's Hoopa Unbound. This is what I like to call a fake dark type. This thing will fold fast. This thing will fold fast to any prep, any U-turns, any slightly effective move. It's not sustainable, and if this thing goes down, these expanding forces are going insane, and I really think the Growlers are going to be on the back foot trying to find... This team really doesn't have any walls. It's pretty much pure offense. It's got like Palossand. It's going to be on the back foot trying to survive the Deoxys Speed's very rapid approach. The expanding force... The force is going to expand this game, I imagine.
Well,
and
you want to keep going?
I think Quickwobble...
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll go a little bit more. I think Quickwobble can do pretty decent this game as a potential support mon, I like to say, in terms of maybe keeping Vales away, potentially Brick Break. I kind of like Brick Break Quickwobble. I kind of like Brick Break knockoff Quickwobble here. It's a unique set that I'm throwing out there, just off the top of my head. I think Brick Break on something when you're going against Ninetales Alola is always a good idea. And I think I'll leave it at that.
Both teams' first full season of PBO, their first game of the week. Who will shine and who will crack under pressure as we move on to, I believe, maybe the final game in Kalos, Caborca versus the Boston Bonnets, and please, St. Louis, 60-40 Caborca?
Yeah, so it is the final game of Kalos, and when looking at this, I think it all comes down to how do you handle Chi-Yu, how do you handle Ursaluna? Because Chi-Yu obviously is so powerful in the special end, and able to just do so much damage so quickly, and so you kind of just have to look at checks. One of those is Tauros Palea Blaze, is resistant to both fire and dark type moves, and if it runs special bulk, maybe it's AV this game. Can definitely put in work, as well as it goes in and counters Galvantula, Dunsparce, Revavroom, Wo-Chien, Ursaluna, Corviknight. It does a lot offensively and able to help wall that Chi-Yu defensively, as well as Florges. It is as well a very special wall, and can potentially put in a little bit of work on that Chi-Yu. And then having like Gengar and especially Excadrill Tyranitar get Sand Rush or Sand Force Excadrill. I don't remember which ability it gets. But having that in Sand and being able to boost its speed with Sand Rush, set up Swords Dance maybe, it can get very scary very quickly for Boston, which is why I have it at 60-40.
Yeah, so I see a major defensive issue for Caborca in the sense that I think the Bayonets have a really good defensive core against Caborca, that being Corviknight Dachsbun. I think Corviknight Dachsbun pose a real problem in that they can kind of wall everything, except maybe Rotom-Mow, but you could bring like potentially to Dunsparce or Galvantula for that. I think Corviknight is a major issue this game in particular. Body press, maybe Iron Defense Corviknight with Roost and maybe Iron Head to hit Florges, I think could prove to be very difficult to deal with for Caborca. I think Rotom-Mow he's relying on pretty heavily for that. Mandibuzz can... How many points is Mandibuzz in this league? Mandibuzz can Terra?
I think I mixed up the Terras on the dock. I think I forgot to change those. So ignore the Terras on Kaborka's side.
Yeah,
I think it's
I was
a
gonna
I
say
think it's a
Mandible
little bit
at
of
90
me
would be
error.
crazy. But I think Chiyu's actually not great this game. Like you said, Paldea Blaze. It has to be Spadef though, because I fought, I think, probably defensive Aqua resist both last week, and Flamethrower does like 40 to 45. It doesn't matter if you're like just defensive. You have to be Spadef, and you probably have to be Assault Vest too, for it to like be an actual counter. But Tyranitar in particular is pretty devastating for Chiyu. Chiyu doesn't get the coverage. It has to run Will-O-Wisp, which is viable, but you're still getting walled. It's just the Tyranitar's burned, which is nice. And then Florges is also pretty. I mean, Florges takes a lot from like an overheat, but if it's like out already, it can wish up. So not Chiyu's greatest matchup, but I do really like Corviknight. I do really like Dashbun to wall Paldea Blaze, to come in on Mandibuzz, to probably Terra, and take on Excadrill pretty decently. If I can find the Terras real quick. All right, and then I think Ursaluna also has a pretty decent matchup this game. I think Ursaluna comes and probably gets at least 1.5 kills, which is usually what you have to ask Ursaluna to do. So that's why I lean more towards Bayonets, just in terms of team build. In terms of player, I don't really know too much about these two. Kaborka's been here for a while. I've seen mixed things, and Bayonets I know lost week 1, I'm pretty sure. So I think they might be similar. I'm not too. Kaborka might be slightly better, but I just really like the defensive backbone of Corviknight Dashbun this game.
Is it a player diff?
Just to clarify,
Yeah.
Passimian's Terra and Florges' Terra, just so that we clear that up.
Oh shit. Okay. Well, is it truly a player diff, or can the defensive core stall out Kaborka? As we head on into Unova Conference, beginning with the New York Malamars and the Charleston Chestnuts. Now, Alabama, you can start with Unova Conference, please.
All right, so I'll start. So New York, as we have all talked about, has an insane team. pretty crazy, but there are a few things that Charleston has going for him that I really like. First, Blood Moon. There is no Ghost on the New York Malamar side, so Blood Moons are fired off for free, and your Blood Moon switch-in, both of the ones that I would consider switch-ins, quote-unquote, Heatran and Slowking Galar, are weak to Earth Power. So Blood Moon becomes really scary this game, in my opinion. I think Rillaboom does a really nice job of stopping potential sweepers in Valiant and Primarina, who I think Primarina is really good in this game. It's probably the best Blood Moon answer, quote unquote, and it also can set up and potentially sweep. But you have issues with Sneasler and of course Rillaboom. I think Malamar's best Pokemon in this game, if I'm being completely honest, is Malamar. Malamar's best Pokemon is Malamar. Superpower Malamar, with like an AV maybe, kind of goes nuts against Charleston. He doesn't really have a switch-in because Drifblim doesn't really want to get knocked off. And these superpowers are coming out on, Revivroom, and you're getting +1/+1. And once you have that defense along with a Spadef of an Assault Vest, you're kind of just like getting at least 1 or 2 kills every single time, I imagine. I think Malamar is really dangerous in this game for Charleston, especially if it's Terra fighting and the superpowers are even more buffed. Baxcalibur, I think, is pretty decent in this game, but I think has, again, a hard time setting up because of the likes of Sneasler. Like, if you get +1 speed, Sneasler gets its own burden boost, and you're kind of just like, oh, well, fuck me. I can't really do anything now because he outspeeds and kills me, even probably through snow. Sneasler's pretty strong. And then I think Landorus is pretty good in this game for Malamars. In fact, I think Landorus is very essential for the likes of Revivroom, who can be very dangerous, for the likes of Rillaboom, who have potentially a dangerous moveset with like Stomping Tantrum, Grassy Glide, that kind of coverage. And also for hitting Cobalion and Diancie. I think Landorus is key in this game, but the issue is Lando's survivability. It can only take so many hits before it eventually dies, unless you're wish passing, which Malamars doesn't have at the moment. So Malamars, I think, has a good team, but I think in particular the Ursaluna matchup makes this very difficult for them.
Yeah, so looking at this, um, as we've said, Malamar's team easily one of the very, very favorites of this league. Has so much power all throughout, Iron Rallying Backs, all that. Um, and then looking at it into the Chestnuts team, Valiant does a decent job of going into Ursaluna in Latias, Kobali and Mandibuzz, while Bax does good with like Rillaboom, can do good against Latias potentially, Driftblim, and Slowking Galar just enabling that. Lando does kind of have to be on the defensive end here for this game. But overall, I like the threats more into Charleston's team. Even with the defensive backbone he has, I think he'll be able to play around that with pivots and hopefully, not hopefully, unbiased. But hopefully for him that he'll be able to execute what he has planned.
All right. Also, one last comment. I think backs should be non-setup. That's my personal opinion, my personal advice, I guess. I think backs should probably be like banded Ice Shard, or I guess like boots, Swords Dance. So I think you should have Ice Shard, is basically what I'm trying to say. That's my opinion on it.
Well, we'll find out. This game music has been game of the week, but that game was reserved for this one. 6 years in the making. The New Jersey Dracos versus the Frderick Klefkis. Alabama, tell me why 40-60.
Yeah, I didn't feel comfortable going too much higher, even though I do think Orange, the Klefkis, are the better player, because I do like quite a few things that Jerseys has going for them. In particular, having Glamora against a guy who has Toxtricity as their poison type is pretty nice, because it kind of either forces Tox to come or forces Tusk to be Boots and Rapid Spin, because those toxic spikes are going to be very annoying. He has, key grounded mons like Ogerpon and Milotic and Deoxys Speed that really don't want to get that chip on them. I think Ogerpon Hearthflame is okay this game. And I think Darkrai is also decent, although Tinkaton proves to be a bit of an issue, in my opinion. I think Crocolore looks pretty alright, especially if it Terra Fairies. Because you can kind of use it against Chomp if you want to, and also it pre-Terra against Scizor, so you get the best of both types if you Terra at the correct time. Slowking, I think, looks pretty decent this game. I think the matchup itself is pretty close. My differential is more so a player differential, in my opinion. It's more so like me trusting Orange to get it done.
Yeah, so in this matchup, friends been waiting so long for this match to happen, and finally it is game of the week. Looking at the teams, Dio Speed obviously was the one that won Orange the game last week, coming in, picking up a kill, switching out, stuff like that. I've experienced firsthand what Dio Speed can do. It is crazy. And into a team like Jerseys, definitely looks not as great. And as Alabama said, definitely more of a player diff more than a matchup diff. However, I do slightly like Orange's matchup better, but I think Orange is a little bit of player than what Ben was giving credit for, which is why I put it as a 70-30.
Jersey, one of the bigger
Also,
underdogs. Go on.
Yeah, I will say Milotic is pretty good in this game. I'm recognizing there's no electric type, and Hearthflame doesn't really want to take Milotic hits too well. So I will say Milotic pretty decent, pretty good.
Jersey a big underdog. Can he overcome it? As we head on to the next game of the week, your luscious Lompanies versus Abbotsford Aggrons. Ben, what can we expect?
Okay, so I think low punnies are really, really, really good. I thought they were good in Kalos. I watched their games; they played really good. Week one, they played really good. They played really safe, and it's kind of the way I like to play too. I think low punnies does a great job of like positioning themselves so they don't necessarily have to make an aggressive play. I think Abbotsford is probably still slightly better, but I don't feel comfortable giving edge either way. That's why I'm going 50-50 because there's a lot of creative sets the low punnies can run. Because I do think the matchup is in Abbotsford favor a little bit. I think Gliscor is pretty good this game. I think Aloe can be pretty devastating. I think Keldeo in particular is pretty nuts. But I think there are a lot of creative sets low punny can run. In particular, she ran it last week, so it's not a secret, so I'll just say it. Toxic Spike's Iron Moth on a team with no grounded poison, unless Alcremie Terra poisons, is really, really nasty against Abbotsford, who has a lot of grounded Pokemon. He has to predict correctly with Hatterene. It's very dangerous because Iron Moth can obviously run a poison move. And I think Annihilate also has a pretty good chance of going nuts this game, especially a taunt variant that outspeeds Gliscor so he can't get poisoned. Like some sort of taunt, bulk up shenanigans. I think Annihilate can be very, very dangerous.
Yeah, looking at it, seeing last week's matchups, Mary busted out the insane tech, weakness policy, agility, cosmic power, DOD. Unfortunately, didn't run recover, and so it died a little too soon before it could finish out the sweep. But overall, just kind of stayed in control the entire game last week, and dominated and went 8-0 in Kalos. Unfortunately, lost first round of playoffs. Would have been great to see what kind of run they put together if that didn't happen. But against one of the cream of the crop, as referred to, in Abbotsford, top of Unova, definitely deserving a game of the week. And as Alabama said, Gliscor looks pretty good. Keldeo looks really, really good into this team. And overall, because it's slightly matchup favored in to Abbotsford, I gave it a 55-45 in favor of Abbotsford.
Will this game go to 100 turns? Or will it end in a sweep? We'll find out. Worcester Whoopers versus the Pittsburgh Scissors. Alabama, tell me why you gave the Worcester Whoopers the 60.
Yeah, so Worcester's team is pretty interesting. It kind of lacks a little bit of cohesion. He doesn't necessarily have the walls, but I do believe in his ability to pivot correctly at times. He's done it before. I've seen it. And I do believe in particular in his Terra captains, who I think are very, very dangerous in this game. I think either or could be very, very devastating. Poltegeist has really dangerous sweeping potential. Pittsburgh doesn't really have a way of stopping it. He doesn't really have a good ghost resist. His ghost resist is Conch Crow. So if he gets the +2 with Poltegeist, I'm really fearing what Shadow Balls are going to be doing to this team. And if he brings Mabostiff, he doesn't have great Mabostiff answers either. He has Clefable, but if Clefable is ever in danger, Mabostiff kind of clears the whole team if it's Banded, Crunch, or if he is a Terra Fairy Play Rough, he can also do pretty good damage. I think I like Banded Dark Crunch more. I think that the Spectrier is looking pretty good in this game, though. Other than the fact that it probably is going to get killed by priority, so it probably won't be able to sweep, but it'll probably be able to get like a big chunk in. Same with Boulder. I think the priority on Worcester's side. I think Crawdaunt looks pretty decent in this game. Iron Treads is obviously a pretty decent answer to the likes of Clefable. It can also come in on like the Amoonguss, especially if they decide to run safety goggles. I think Worcester is going to surprise people this week in particular with potentially Poltegeist, I think looks really, really nasty.
Yeah. Looking at this, obviously, if anyone was around last season, looking at the Mabostiff, aka Mabalstiff, on
Yeah.
Charleston's team, that thing went nuts. Into mini matchups, won a game, or made a very decisive play that ended up winning the game, and just being a fan favorite mon all around. The only thing I don't particularly like about its situation is the lack of hazard speed control. Um, like I don't think anything wants to really be running Trick Room, especially with like Ogerpon and Latios and Armarouge. So it does kind of hurt the Mabostiff standing there. And as well as Spectrier, Iron Boulder, Blastoise, everything being able to set up. LaFable kind of has to carry the load on the defensive end and actually can have set web set on Worcester's side, even worse, weakening their speed tiers, which I guess could mean Trick Room goes even crazier. But overall, I think that matchup is definitely in favor of the Scizors, and that's why I'm giving it a 60-40 in the Pittsburgh Scizors' favor.
Can the Worcester Whoopers do it? Or can Pittsburgh get a win here? A much needed win. Even though week 2, a win is needed. As we head on to Alabama versus Sin City now. St. Louis, please give us the biggest spread we've seen in the favor of the Alakazams. Why?
So, yeah, this matchup, first of all, week 1, Sin City showed up, and I'm not going to lie, they got smacked. Jersey showed up, and he showed out, winning very, very decisively. And as we discussed, week 1, this team for Sin City doesn't have much cohesion. It doesn't look like it goes together very well, and it didn't really seem like it in week 1 either. And Alabama being a who I believe to be a better player than Jersey, maybe not having the better team, but the matchup overall I think does benefit Alabama, and with the player diff, I think it's going to be dominated by the Alakazams, especially Volbeat and Petrorunt. Can't be beat.
Petrorunt 6-0 incoming. Let's see it happen. Head on to Kingston and Vancouver. And this game looks nice. Alabama, give it to me.
All right. So there are a few things about this game that are kind of annoying for Vancouver. Glastrier looks pretty devastating. It gets really nice coverage. It's a Terra Captain. He needs to have Cresselia or potentially like a defensive Tentacruel or Golden Go, but even then coverage with like Stomping Tantrum can really damage those two. He has Appleton, but that would require it being his Terra Captain in order for him to take hits from Glastrier. Pheasantipity, I think, is pretty good in this game for Kingston, getting those statuses off. It does pretty good against Enam. It does pretty good against Appleton. It does pretty good against Electrode. And it can probably tank one Make It Rain if you're like a Spadef Pheasantipity from Golden Go. I think Crocodile struggles in this matchup. Swampert and Corviknight make it pretty difficult. I think Mienshao actually looks pretty decent for Kingston. I think Kingston just has a lot more momentum on his side in this game. It's pretty difficult for Vancouver to kind of grab the opportunity to win. He needs to really position himself correctly to have a chance, in my opinion.
Yeah. So looking at the matchup here, obviously Dragapult diff is kind of crazy. Corviknight as well looks really good into this matchup, mainly as a defensive piece. Being able to switch into hits from like Crook and Golden Go, having the Hammer, it doesn't look as good as it did week 1, but still looks good. Being able to do a little bit of damage to the Gouging Fire, being able to handle the Golden Go, Crook, Cresselia as well. Azelf, as we saw, could go boom. Kingston wasn't the one that ran it last week, but who knows? Maybe he's taking a page out of Philadelphia. And then, as you said, me and Shao looking pretty good into this team. And because of that, I have Kingston winning this 60-40.
Not bad. Kingston needs the win. Head on to Sunnyside versus Virginia, a tale oldest time. These two go back, way back. Alabama. Give it to me.
Yeah, so I actually gave this one to Virginia slightly. I know Fix is a pretty good player, and I think he has some pretty key Pokemon that make this a pretty good, decent matchup for him. Empoleon, I think, looks really nice here for Volcarona and Fion. Having Roar is really good, and also probably taking a hit from Wellspring as well. Potentially running Air Slash, Water Move, Roar, and Roost could look pretty good here, something along those lines. I think Chiempao is also pretty decent this game. His water type, when your water type is Fion, like your ice resist water type is Fion, you're looking pretty good. His ice resists are Ninetales Alola, who isn't like really ice resist. I mean, in snow it is actually, because it gets a big defense boost. And then Sandslash Alola, I'm imagining it's gonna have Sacred Sword for the Sandslash Alola. I think Hoopa Unbound is alright this game, especially if it's like Special Grass Knot for Ting Lu. I do think it's going to be pretty close. I think Articuno Galar has a decent chance of doing something this game with some sort of, agility, Calm Mind strat, with stored power potentially, Terra Fighting. I think Okidogi is pretty bad in general, but in this game, I think it's not great either. I think it really only does something against potentially potentially like Miss Magius if you don't get Will-O-Wisp, and like maybe Fion too if Fion's Terra Fairy, I think it is. But I really like Ting Lu as well. I think Ting Lu is pretty good in this game. I think Ting Lu should be a berry, and I think Ting Lu should set up hazards, because the hazard removal on Sunnyside's side is Sandslash Alola, I believe. And I think that's it. So if Ting Lu can get his hazards up, that'd be pretty devastating for Sunnyside. I think Thundurus with Thunderwave can stop potential setup sweeping from Sunnyside as well. The Ursaluna looks pretty devastating. Shaman's probably going to have to be like max defense, and even that probably won't be enough. So I think Ursaluna is really, really devastating, but even when Ursaluna's good, it doesn't sweep. So like Ursaluna's good here, and I think it's probably getting like a max of 2 kills, because that's usually just how Ursaluna goes. It's kind of a short timer Pokemon. So unless Sunnyside plays out of their mind with like pivots and stuff. That's what I imagine. So I think Ursaluna's good, but I think there's a lot of good Pokemon on Virginia's side as well. And I think Virginia has a little bit more backbone, just ever so slightly, to potentially get this win.
Yeah, looking at Mug's side, obviously, lost in week 1 against Abbotsford. Potentially lost because of a miss on a Hypnosis, I believe. Unfortunate, but that's why we play the game. Looking at Vale and Ursaluna and Ogerpon and Komo-O, Volcarona, Fion, even Sandslash and Hoopa Unbound potentially being able to set up is very good. The potential of screen breaking is also very high with Chiempao, and just overall, Fix's team definitely has a lot better defensive checks into Sunnyside's team, while Sunnyside has the more offensive threats. And as long as they are able to pivot correctly, I think that their team should be able to squeak out a win, maybe 2-0, 1-0 over Virginia.
Will the Sunnyside Suicunes play an offensive team like a defensive team, or can they break through Virginia's defenses as we head? Oh, is that last game? That's the last game.
Last game.
That's the last game. I was ready for another one. Well, let's see how well y'all do. Let's see if we can keep track. Come back to this. Any closing thoughts, you guys?
Should be a good week. Lots of pretty close matchups. Lots of interesting games. I like, Crook versus Orange. That's a pretty cool one. This one's pretty cool. And then I'm pretty interested in Mary versus Abbotsford as well. They're kind of the 3 Unova games that really pique my interest.
Definitely gonna be a very good week of PBO action. Looking at Callow specifically for me, having that game of the week with not myself, but shoot,
Gross
who did I
Warren?
pick? Yeah, not that one. The other one. Tokyo and Philadelphia. Seeing this game is going to be very, very interesting one. Really testing skill of both players and seeing just how far they can take their teams. Definitely going to be very exciting. Some fast games, some potentially really long ones, but exciting nonetheless.
Well, everybody, that'll do it here. Make sure to check out the YouTube, all the videos we got, and probably daily uploads, if I had to guess, as long as everything goes correctly.
Potentially.
Thank you, Aiden. Thank you, Ben. And we'll see you on the next one.
Of course.
Bye-bye.
See ya.